B1AG, I want the bag. Work my way from a garden to a track. Flip it from a track to a plot full of acres. Do it for the farmers and producers and the makers. What we even here for? Occasionally I ask it. I know it's more than struggling, anticipating the casket. Reap what we sow, trying to fill up my basket. Life's a plantation, I self-law and master. Over the plot I've been granted on this planet. Now it's slanted, cause the chosen been supplanted. But if you overstand it, it was spoken. Fractured, but we ain't broken. Even though some would rather play the role of token, we growing. Black through the essence of a presence. We carry the blood of gods, we carry the mind of peasants. Rich black gardens, future look more like Eden. Multiply seeds like the seed banks in Sweden. Rep my planners on plan according to season. B1 code, switching it up is treason. Black power, family what we eat. Either we get fed or we feed. B1AG.
What's going on? What's growing on? What is growing on? Welcome to B1AG Daily Bread Podcast. I'm John Henry Harris, and we also have Farmer Brown, the MC. Here at B1AG, we focus on Black agriculture as it pertains to agricultural production, education, marketing, health, food, nutrition, and economics, all for the Black family and for the Black community. Welcome, Black, to the garden. Today, we're going to have an interesting discussion that we're going to have, and this discussion revolves around trust. Trust. Now, the definition of trust is a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. Mathematically, trust equals consistency over time. Now, John Henry, why are we talking about trust? Because trust does play an integral role when it comes to agriculture and our food system, and also building a better food system. And here at B1AG, we're going to look at the dynamics of trust, the role it has played in agriculture and us trying to build our own food system and to sustain ourselves throughout American history, and how we can get over that barrier to feed our own selves. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, breaking the trust barrier to feed ourselves. Farmer Brown, who do you trust?
First, I just like to say peace to the B1 family. Hope everybody's doing well. My mom always tells me, Trevor, act like it's nobody but you and God. Saying that to say, when we think about this concept of trust and human interactions, peace, Cherry Wildflower, we need to chop it up with you. According to Sigmund Freud, in the deepest essence of human nature, it consists of first, self-preservation, second, aggression, third, the need for love, and fourth, the impulse to attain pleasure and avoid pain. When we have this discussion today, I would like for the family to keep those four components of a human in mind when we talk about trust. Sometimes trust is based on, I'm going to ask you something and you're going to give me an honest answer. But then also trust can just be, I know what I'm dealing with. And so since we know what we're dealing with, how do we move forward? As you were saying, how does this conversation tie with agriculture? We understand food is one of the most natural functions that any living organism has, whether you're talking about plants, animals, or humans. And so we find ourselves in a situation where 1.4% of 3.5 million producers in this country are melanated. And so, there's a lot of reasons why this statistic exists. And we also see ourselves, unfortunately, as a group that is dependent on people who have baked into a system that these people aren't going to be able to feed themselves. And when we think about stories like the Black Panthers, United Farm Workers, for example, which we'll touch on later, there have been very strategic moves and efforts to keep certain groups from being able to feed themselves. And so once again, our conversation is today, we like to be productive and solution-based. How can we build this trust to work towards feeding ourselves?
This trust thing is really bigger than It's a huge barrier. You know, some people may not trust a black farmer because they may look at, well, maybe their vegetables or their produce is inferior. The black farmers don't necessarily trust agencies that are put in place, you know, to help that are supposed to help them get subsidies and monies to help their operation, because historically they just haven't helped. Like if we look at the Farmers of Color Act that was signed in March, it's legislated. The government said we're going to give you debt relief, over $4 billion in debt relief. It's December 2nd. Those black farmers still have not received that legislated debt relief, as it's still tied up in the quagmire of the court system. There's a trust in agriculture, trust in this food. You know, do we trust Bill Gates to feed us? Do we trust a lab-grown meat? Do we trust all these different GMOs? Trust is integral when it comes to our agriculture and our food system.
You know, ag is a team sport. The concept of I can just plant the seed, I can grow it, I can process it, I can harvest it, process it, distribute it, market it. You have to be Superman or Superwoman to do that efficiently without burning yourself out. And so it is a team sport. Dr. Boyce, he was almost preaching the other day. He was actually reading from Dr. Claude Anderson's Black Labor, White Wealth, and just talking about how mathematically it was baked in back in the 1600s of why we see this dynamic we see today. I had two interesting meetings this week, and these were work meetings. One was with the family. It was a young couple that had just bought some acres, and they were wanting to see what is the best thing they can produce and make their operation profitable. And so as an extension agent, my job is to give research-based information and, you know, connect these people with the necessary parties. So saying that to say there is a trust. I can definitely give you scientific research-based information on what to produce, but okay, once I've given you the information, there's then an action item that the family, that the client, that the stakeholder has to take. And so after I've given you my piece of this broader structure, I have to trust that the agency that you spoke of, or the office, whether it's the NRCS, whether it's the USDA, whether it's your local ag department, I have to trust that the person there whose desk you're going to go to, or on the other line, or at the end of the email, is going to have the same value in helping your operation. A lot of times we run into a lot of well-meaning individuals that, you know, they're giving all they can to make something work, present opportunities, present information, but then there is this trust that has to be, it's one thing believing, but then there's another thing you have to know. The infographic you use as a thumbnail. Okay, we're on this cliff. Now, you got your hand out, and I'm thinking you're going to grab my hand and pull me up. But if you don't grab my hand as I reach for you, I could fall down this cliff. And so when we think about this economically, when we think about the people that are altruistic, when we think about a lot of the organizations, I think about BLM, these people that are suddenly woke. They realize after 400 years, we've been doing these people horrible. Some of it could be true, some of it could be theater. But saying that to say, to make a formidable ag system work, you have to have trust with all of the different components. And when we think about the history, like I said, I would encourage the family that hasn't already looked into the history of COINTELPRO. What was the relationship of COINTELPRO with the Black Panthers, for example? The Black Panthers were basically trying to feed people, doing the lunch programs, just doing programs to supplement a community that had been neglected by the trusted governmental bodies that were, tasked, voted in, however you want to say it, to take care of this group. But the Black Panthers were infiltrated. There were notes. When I say notes, I mean communications. Here today, we're talking about emails. We're talking about different ways we communicate that were disrupted, fabricated. You had fake individuals literally sending misinformation to one another. So what that did, it stoked distrust. At the same time, you have I believe there's way more people in the world that don't want to do right than wrong. But like I said, all it takes is one bad apple to spoil the bunch. And so once again, as we navigate this space of wanting to feed ourselves, how do we have this conversation without, one side seeming to go against the other? How do we have this conversation with the understanding that we are a very distrustful people? And real quick, so this infographic right here, I think this breaks down a lot of what we're talking about. And so if we just break this down to the melanated family, and these are very real issues. If you look at each of these words as wires, and that centerpiece being a healthy, wealthy, formidable, productive, melanated community, these wires. So on one side, you have the Black, you have the African, you have the melanated, indigenous, Morris, Aboriginal. We only have, they say, 40 some million of us in the nation. And so there's a lot of us that are broken up in one of these categories. As far as religion, spirituality, you have Christian, you got Hebrew, you got Muslim, you got Kemetic, you got non-denominational, you got atheist. And so once again, here's another fracture to where these wires don't connect. Then for political people, so you have your conservative, then you have your liberal. So right there represents another fracture. Then you have the capitalist-minded people, which capitalism isn't bad. Then you have the communist-minded people. Let's do this communally. And so each side has justification, whether right or wrong, to why they hold that stance. But then you have your righteous versus ratchet. There's some people that are perturbed by people with their nose up in the air. Oh, I'm holier than thou. And then you got those that some would call ratchet. Like, let me just be what I am. Let me just do what I do. You have the integrationist versus the separatist. The integrationist believes, okay, even after all of the things that's going on, I believe, running into this house where I do see some smoke, but I believe that this smoke might just disappear. And then you have your separatist. You have your regressive. These are the people that want to go more traditional ways. When we talk about getting black to the garden, it's employing many of the ways that our ancestors understood. Then you have the progressives. Hey, let's move forward. Let's incorporate technology. Let's create all of these new avenues. So once again, there's logic in both sides. You have the initiated versus the uninitiated, whether you're talking about your Divine Nine, your different organizations, your community organizations. And so there's a fracture there. On one side doesn't trust the other because they haven't gone through initiation. I don't know if I can trust you. But then those who haven't been initiated feel like, okay, well, are you a part of the talented 10th that believes that you're somehow separate from the rest of us? Then you have your formally educated. This is the people with the degrees, the educated people. And I'm somebody with a degree. So like I said, I can understand both sides. And then you have those that just understand, they graduated from the school of hard knocks. They're skilled tradesmen or tradeswomen. They understand things on a more hands-on in a hands-on situation. And so once again, either side that you talk about within that dynamic has a justification of why their stance is as it is. But when we think about this equation, going back to what Dr. Boyce was saying, there was a math that was put together, a very specific math as to why society operates the way it does and why we find ourselves as a melanated community in the, I hate to say it, disparaging position we find ourselves in when it comes to feeding ourselves. What is the one thing that all of those factions have in common? The common denominator is we all have to eat. We all have to eat. It doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on. It doesn't matter how you look at the world. I know plenty of melanated people that got money that are discriminated just as much as melanated people who don't have money. I know many educated people that are wanting to move up the social ladder, move up the professional ladder. They're going to hit, no matter how hot the burning sand was, you're going to hit this glass. And you're limited. A lot of times we find people who are compromised. They understand that there's a better way to operate. But when we think about Sigmund Freud, that impulse to attain pleasure and avoid pain, there are these electric fences within the professional realm, even within the streets where, hey, man, don't cross that boundary or this is what's going to happen. This method is applied when you're raising livestock. And so if I'm a livestock farmer and I don't want my cows to get off of my property, I'm going to put up this electric fence. I know once this heifer hits this fence and gets that little zap that goes through her body, she's going to keep her calf from going anywhere near it. And so when we think about economically, when we think about the efforts that have been taken against, say, it makes me think of the Elaine massacre and the sharecroppers, who are literally just, standing up for their rights as producers. When we think about the Black Panthers who are just wanting to be able to feed people. When you think about the ancestors like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, these were people that spoke out to build the community. And there were these zaps. There was these things put in place to put fear in the mind of anybody that thinks they want to engage upon, trying to help the melanated community. And so that's justifiable. I'm somebody that has, I have 2 kids and I want to see them grow up, right? And so, but at the same time, I understand we weren't given a spirit of fear. What is the math? What is the balance of how to move forward with something as simple and codified as feeding ourselves?
And for those watching, do you trust yourself? Do you really trust yourself that you can go out here and plant some seeds, tend to those seeds and those plants until they grow and bear fruit, and eat that food and provide food for yourself? Can you get past that fear to trust yourself that you can feed yourself? We think you can. We're sure you can. I'm confident that you can. That's why we have healthyblackfood.com. Learn how to grow your own food there. Please sign up. I'm confident you can.
There's this concept we talk about frequently with the ancestor Booker T. Watley. One of his rules was avoid the middleman like a plague. When we're specifically talking about agriculture, when we're specifically talking about what we call Black producers, there is this dynamic of brokers. Hey, brother, sister, I want to help you make some money with your farm. I know this person over here. I know this buyer over here. I know this agency over here that can help you. So many times these are going to be well-meaning people that, they have a plug somewhere and they realize, hey, I want to help this group over here. So I'm going to mediate this connection. And many times, whether well-meaning or not, there's a disruption. I came to you with this opportunity, assuming that the person who offered it to me was going to do what they said they're offering. And so there has been a lot of distrust over the decades when it comes to melanated farmers of that connection being made. So once again, when we have this B1AG discussion, it isn't about trying to be the middleman of somebody making their money. If somebody wants to help a farmer, the best way to help them is directly spend with them. When you have to go through all of these intermediaries, this is where you're going to start running into the questionable practices. This is where you're going to start running into people's impulse to attain pleasure and avoid pain. And so once again, for those that are altruistic that want to help melanated farmers, you can do a Google search. There's organizations. We're not implicated. We don't speak for any organization other than B1AG. There's organizations like Black Farmers, National Black Farmers Association, Black Farmers and Agriculturalists Association, Black Urban Growers Association, Federation of Southern Cooperatives. There are many organizations around the country that specifically cater to the melanated farmers. And so this is literally a thing of intent. Hey, I want to help this group. I want to see what I can do to actually make sure that this group is able to thrive. And here we have a infographic of some of, just some of these organizations. And we'll leave this up for a second for you to write down if you're interested. Like I said, here at B1AG, we're not directly tied to any of them. We are a part of, some of these groups online. We do interact, but there is a value in just being able to find your lane. Our lane at B1AG is how do we expand this conversation? How do we bring this conversation to some people who may not, be in the realm of having these conversations? How do we talk about certain ideas that, it's not about listening to John Henry or Farmer Brown. How do I listen to what these two crazy guys was talking about and apply this in my household, apply this into my community, apply this with whatever group that I represent? You think about your bread and butter farms on Facebook, Sunjoin Hemp Group, Black Outdoorsmen, Black Owned Farms, Black Ag Enterprise Entrepreneurs of America, National Black Food and Justice Alliance, Black Farmers Nationwide. And these are just a few But for the melanated family, I guarantee you within this, there's tens of thousands of people, like-minded individuals who are on this same journey as you that want to get, what can we do to support? If not support, what can I do to create my own operation? And so it's one of those things we have to have the intent to want to be a part of it first. Like I said, it is easy to just say, oh, I support this and then go about our day. But then there is an extra step of actually taking the initiative to reach out to some of these groups. What I can tell you is I was talking to somebody the other day. It's like the dope game. You're not going to go to the plug and be like, now, hey, now, where's your plug? Because whoever's sourcing you is going to be like, now, why do you want to know where my plug is? And that's going to create distrust. And so what would have otherwise been, I don't want to use the word positive in that context, but what would have otherwise been a productive interaction has now become contentious because, once again, this distrust has been stoked over the decades, over the centuries. And so, once again, keeping in mind, it's identifying what is your skill set. What are you good at? You understand in any sort of food system, you have people that produce it, you have people that harvest it, process it, store it, distribute it, market it. You have people that prepare these foods. And so, none of these are like abstract concepts. These are things that our ancestors have been practicing for centuries. I keep quoting Dr. Boyce because he was preaching. We have to create a math. The infographic we showed earlier, the end of the equation should equal a formidable B1 food secure system. From that B1 food secure system, just like we were talking about the Mormons or any other of these groups the other day, once you're able to feed yourself, you now have surplus to feed others. And so whether you're on the side, for example, of the integrationist or the separatist, hey, there is a value in being separate amongst your own. When we talk about integration, let's have an integration of economies, meaning we produce something on our side that, once we've been able to satiate our need, supply our need, we're now able to sell our surplus to others who value what it is we're producing. But it starts with the individual. And when I say individual, you can apply that to the individual person, family, business, farm, or community. But we have to build this trust, and we have to have an honest conversation about the dynamics that are affecting why we're only 1.4% of primary operators. Why is it out of the 10 most food insecure counties in North America, most of them have 60% or more melanated people? When it comes to these pre-existing conditions that make us subject to a lot of genetic therapy, so to speak. Why is it the majority us? There are some mathematic reasons outside of conspiracy theory, outside of Hotepism, outside of tinfoil kufi. There are some very real strategic reasons why we find ourselves in this situation. And it is my modest conjecture that upon really individually internalizing, identifying our place within the food system is a start. Because it's one thing that even if we're mute, deaf, can't hear, can't talk, our bodies will still need to eat. If we have offspring, if we have family, those people still need to eat. And so it's like when we think of, you can't eat social justice. I've never tasted a social justice burger. How long are we going to wait for some sort of debt relief or reparations? If reparations comes, that is great. Is due, is needed. But how many generations are we gonna let go down the road until we take some initiative on ourselves collectively? When I say collectively, it doesn't mean everybody does it the same, but we understand everybody has to eat. I don't know of anybody that got a different type of mouth. I think all of our mouths are in this part of our body. Our nose, we can sense the smell of what we're eating. We have a digestive system. And so being very strategic and codified, how do we make sure we're satiating the need of what we put in our mouths that go through our digestive system? Because somebody else has done this math. I don't want to put this in a black and white because people around the world understand that everybody needs to eat. Our ancestors originated, which is what built the wealth of what we call North America. Our ancestors were the one fulfilling this need. And it was in an economic system. It was, once again, going back to this word system, it was within an economic system that literally wasn't designed to make the melanated people producing this food the key stakeholders. But every day, each of us wake up, we have a choice to decide now, am I going to go along with the status quo to get some semblance of pleasure and avoid pain? Or am I going to endure whatever pain and subject myself to all the possible pleasure of finding my niche within creating this more sustainable melanated system that we can then have a choice? I think it was Dr. John Henry Clark was saying we need to have a choice whether to come sit down at the table or not.
Trust. It's the foundation of any relationship. It's the foundation of any interaction. And when it comes to our food system, this trust, it needs to encompass, not only the production of the food, but all the other factors of production to getting the food to our table, as well as being able to trust that this will nourish us, that this food is good to eat, not just in taste, but in nutritional value and not of danger. And the best way to ensure that is to know what's going into your food. And that takes more of an intimate relationship with your food and with the food system. That's why they're trying to localize everything. If your food system is localized, that food is tended by hands in your community. The inputs with the water, how it was grown, that's right there. You know what's going on. You know what's growing on. And we need to have a more intimate relationship with our food and our food system for ourselves. We need to take back our stake in this food system for ourselves. Because right now we have very little stake in it. We pay no attention to it. We just trust that the food they give us is good, even though we have diabetes, heart attacks, and all these other pre-existing conditions. This food that is killing us is food that is not made by our hands. This food that is killing us is food that we have no intimate relationship with. We don't even know if it's real.
Bruh, the second meeting I had this week, it was with a city official in one of the towns in Kentucky, and they want to put together a farm to table dinner for specifically around Black farmers. Very good idea, very altruistic in nature. The goal was to how can we source this meal from Black farmers. And so I think it was a great discussion and a great start. And so as a conversation progressed, my natural question was, now, are they going to be paid? And, is this going to be a thing where I need you to give me this food first and then I'll pay you later? Because this is the dynamic that a lot of the farmers have dealt with. Somebody promised me something in the front end. I went and did my part, brought it to the table. It was consumed. And then when I came for my check, not for charity, not for a handout, but for the check that was promised to me, it wasn't there. And so when we think about these areas of distrust, okay, first, whoever brought this to my attention is something to do. I now don't trust them. Whether you're talking about on a city level or state level or federal level, the entity, the agency that said that they were going to come through and do this for me, I don't trust them either. And so what happens 2 years later that either one of those entities within this process comes with something real that is legitimate? Are you going to trust them? Are you going to be able to take advantage of what would, otherwise be a good opportunity? That connection ain't going to happen if that trust is burnt on the front end. Like I said, sometimes it's because people don't think things all the way out. Sometimes it's because there's nefarious people that understand, okay, by understanding human nature, because I understand the human math. When we look at one, we know one represents one digit when we're doing digital math. But there is a very codified psychological human math that there's just some things you can expect dealing with humans. And so if I drop a little bit of resources over here and make it only available for a handful, I can trust, especially this melanated community who has been left out of everything, to go in on each other. This crabs in the bucket mentality that many people speak about, that is mathematic. That is mathematic. I know if I cram all of you in here, your natural instinct is one of self-preserve. I know if I'm crammed in this basket with all of these people, I'm not going to survive. So I must get to the top. I must get to the top. How do I get to the top? It's stepping on these other crabs. It's cutting up these other crabs. And whoever's outside of this they have the power. When we talk about this power, whoever's on the outside of this bucket has the power to put a lid on it. So it don't matter how high you climbed up within this construct, I can still put a lid on it. Our conversation here at B1AG is how do we make sense within this bucket of crabs, so to speak? How do we do something to where, okay, it's understood that we understand this dynamic, this intended result of us going in on each other, stifling one another, tripping each other up? What is one thing we can agree on? As crabs, instead of us fighting each other, can we do a one at a time approach? You know, and this is a conversation. It does sound very utopian, but look at the practicality. If we just want to use the crab in a bucket, for example, we know if X amount of crabs, I think they're about this thick, stand on one another. If you're in this tight bucket, if X amount of you can agree to just, you know, stand on each other, right? And agree that at one at a time, one of us will get out and we'll keep climbing up. And then when the last few are at the bottom, who are the base, you know, what did they say? The poor righteous teachers. Sometimes to make this happen, it's not always profitable on the front end, right? If that's what you're going into for profit. But in this proverbial crabs in the bucket scenario, okay, the crabs that got out because the other ones were willing to stand on top of each other. Now we agree to lock our little claws and make sure we pull up those last few at the bottom who sacrificed. They were willing to be the foundation of this trust activity, meaning we don't know if we'll be able to get out or not. We're assuming if I stand my post, allow you to stand on my head, allow this other one to stand on, we'll slowly make this ladder to where we're not cutting each other out. That is feasible. You know, is this an overnight activity? Absolutely not, because we're talking about centuries of this trust being stolen. But once again, here at B1AG, our goal is how do we have this conversation? One of our intentional reasons of not being, you know, specifically tied to any specific organization, because that's where bias comes in. An organization is no different than a person. As an organization, I want to preserve myself. I'm going to be aggressive when it looks like I'm competing with other organizations. And we want to attain the benefits of being organized. And we want to avoid the pain of what happens if we're not organized or on our square. So once again, how do we, it's not a thing about trying to get everybody to agree. I think that's mathematically impossible. But how do we have a conversation where a critical mass of us within all of the respective communities, not just in what we call Turtle Island, North America, but around the diaspora, we can come to this central concept that, you know what, it was food production that built the wealth of all of these countries that got colonized. It was our inability to protect it, because obviously we knew how to grow it, or else, you know, these dynamics wouldn't exist. But it's our inability to protect it and our inability to lock up in this proverbial chain around the central idea of we want to feed each other. And then every other part of human activity will fall into place once we're able to feed each other and then protect what it is we're producing.
B1AG family, trust that we are here to blow this trumpet for food security for our people. That's what we're here for. You can trust that. We're not that we don't have 1 million subscribers. We're not on, you know, all on your TVs and radios and things like that. But you can trust that our message is true and it's heartfelt, that we need to be able to grow our own food. We need to build our own food system. We need to be prepared for anything that comes down the pipeline. We have to be. We have to be. We can't necessarily trust what we've been used to. We can't. and it shows that by the fruit that it bears. All these pre-existing conditions in our community. This food is not good for us. The economic lockout of not being able to produce our own food, that's not working for us. All this land being stolen from the melanated communities every year at a rate of almost 30,000 acres per year. That doesn't work for us. But we got to pay attention to it, understand what's going on, and act in kind. And when I say act in kind, it's time for some action. We got to start growing our own food. We need to start purchasing land. We need to start looking at ways that we can become more self-sufficient. As the supply chain disruptions continue, as the food shortages continue, we're going to have to save ourselves. So let's make sure that we're prepared and in a good position to do just that. It's one thing to survive. It's a whole nother thing to thrive. And I believe that we can thrive on our own, doing for ourselves. And from there, that's when we can step in power.
Mathematically, non-politically, non-denominational, it was food production that built the wealth of any land. Food production, what is it? Food, fuel, and fiber. The fiber for clothes, the wood, the other natural resources that build structures and build cities. It was literally that. Investing is great. There was no such thing as crypto when our ancestors built the wealth of what we call North America. It was at that time, and I wasn't living at that time, but it was at that time there wasn't a code in place to be able to protect what was taken. There was this trust that these people that are coming over here, these pilgrims or these colonizers, we just want to help you. That was our nature. We're in this land of abundance, and we assumed that everybody, has this communal connection with one another. And so, to our detriment, this got co-opted for a couple of 100 years. I tend to believe we haven't seen our finest moment yet. And I believe we're in the precipice of our finest hour, as the Sister Vicky Dillard says. But there is going to be a specific math that has to be applied. There's a lot of vague ways to approach it, but very direct is being able to feed ourselves. That comes with millions of jobs. That comes with millions of entrepreneurial opportunities. That comes with millions when we think about education. The education we understand today is like high schools and public school is fairly new when you look at the timeline of humanity. Does that mean, okay, for millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years, whichever timeline you want to go by, that people didn't learn anything and people were stupid? Not at all. Most of us have great-grandparents or grandparents who had third grade educations that were able to run full operations and build thriving families. Our aunts and uncles, great aunts and uncles. And so we find ourselves now with all of this education, all of this technology, and we're feeding ourselves less than those without these things before us. And so how do we learn from the lessons from the past? How do we take our strengths from what we've learned? How do we take our talents? How do we take our passions? I will be honest, to get in this ag thing, there has to be a passion. If your passion is self-preservation, you have to eat to survive. The world, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to frame it, is becoming more competitive. I'm competing, just as an entrepreneur, as an individual, with more people in this land we call North America than, say, my mother did. Maybe my mother was just dealing with, 2 or 3 different ethnicities or nationalities of people when she was coming up in the Deep South. Versus now, I think there's 80 different languages spoken just in Kentucky. When we think about the broader continent, there's hundreds of different languages spoken. And all of these are different people coming from different places. And the one thing all of them have in common is they have to eat. Now, when you start breaking down the math, now what makes this group more powerful, able to get resources, able to utilize these agencies and all of these other things that we've trusted have our best interests at heart. Now, how are they able to leverage resources from them? It's because they have a code. When we talk about B1, it's not being disparaging of other groups. It's putting B1 first, black first, melanated first. Let's not get divided once again. But it's really being codified around we want to eat. We want to feed ourselves. We don't want to wait on somebody to decide, oh, this is fair. Oh, I'll wait. Oh, well, let's, run this through this office first, then that office. We have the power to feed ourselves. We all have the power to grow, to understand this process. We all have the power in our hands right now. Even if social media, even if the computers go down, guess what? The land is still there. There's seeds somewhere. And this is once again one of the purposes of B1AG pushing this algorithm. These are conversations we have to have. It doesn't mean talk about the other news of the day, but within the conversations that go on within the melanated community, talking about feeding one another, talking about being able to feed ourselves should, I would say, be in the top 3. Because whatever the popular news story is of today, you have to ask now, after I read this story, after I consumed this story, now, am I more healthy? Am I more nutritious? Am I more prepped now to meet the challenges of the future?
If you'd like to reach out to B1AG, you can hit us up at B1AgHipHop@gmail.com. B1AgHipHop@gmail.com. Questions, comments, concerns, or just to pass on some information. We're very responsive, and we love to hear from you and communicate with you one-on-one. We all have to eat, y'all. We all have to eat. And again, I like to say, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And we need to expand this conversation. We're very grateful for our subscribers, but we need more subscribers. We need more people in on this conversation. We need more people to become more aware of what's going on with our food. So like, share, and subscribe. Liking, sharing, subscribing, that's a free act. It doesn't cost you anything but a click of a button. And link up and let's stay in tune with each other. Let's stay in tune with each other. Let's spread this information, and let's grow together. We're talking about us growing food for ourselves as individuals, but ideally, as we're growing for ourselves individually, we'll be able to grow more for our community and then even expand further to regions. Because at the end of the day, hunger is everywhere. And if we are food secure, if we make sure that we're growing and we're growing our own food, hunger will be nowhere. So we can eradicate hunger ourselves. We can kick hunger's butt simply by planting some seeds and sharing food or feeding those that need.
And Cherry Wallflower, if you're still in the building, if you could inbox us your information, we have somebody that wants to reach out to you in regards to something we have been discussing. But yeah, family, this is an opportunity. Whether it's one person, 100 people, 1,000,000 people, all it takes is one pin tip to bust a big balloon, right? And so our goal is just to have this conversation. It's not about everybody agreeing. None of us are here like, hey, we have all the answers. But mathematically, we all have to eat. That's one thing that we all have in common, and that is something that we do have power. We have power to decide if we're going to take this as something as a priority. Peace. And this is what it's about. This is what it's about, family. I tell you what, personally, not to digress from what we're talking about, some of the things that have rewarded me in my path the most are from people I'll probably never talk to, never meet in person. But all it takes is just one seed of somebody saying something that resonates. And you never, I remember the brother Lockridge was talking about where he's at and just people, thinking he's country. Man, why y'all over here growing food? But there's that one person that it might be the 10th time that they walk past seeing who's this crazy country dude growing this food? Who's these crazy people growing food? All it takes is that one person, that one young mind or older mind to like, you know what, that makes sense. I just went to this store. I just seen the General Mills said that all of their food is going to go up 20%. This was over the last few days. So, man, I think that brother Lockridge got something going on. I'm gonna go talk to some of my network, and this might be your next George Washington Carver, Booker T. Watley. But all it takes is that seed being planted, and we're in an age now of transparency. To not confuse each other with our words is shining that light. A light doesn't speak any language. A light just shines. A light does what it does, and it illuminates a path for those who are going on this path. So saying that to say, Brother Lockridge, I mean, that's beautiful. That's what this is about.
Shout out to Nathaniel Lockridge. He's checking in from West Texas. And I also like to give a special shout out to my family down there in Amarillo. So, yeah, I got my Texas roots too. You can hear it in my voice.
That's math. Hey, that's math. And so I don't know how many people he works with, but to put this into perspective, I'll probably never meet any of these people. You'll probably never meet any of them, right? None of these podcasts ever last longer than a couple of minutes. But from one individual, I came across this thing just, flipping through my timeline, talking about a certain thing. From one individual, okay, I'm already doing my thing, but now the people at my job, whether it's 4, whether it's 40, however, have all agreed to do a garden. It's that golden spiral. It's that golden spiral. And so if we amplify this conversation, any one of us can become that seed that spark action, because ultimately that's what this is all about. I think that the days of fandom and all of that are over with. Like, we really need some real solutions. And one of the best solutions is producing. It's really stoking this producer mindset, production over consumption. And this is one at a time. We didn't get in this position overnight. It wasn't just one gunshot that put us, paralyzed us. This was many components over a long period of time. And so once again, applying that math of where we find ourselves now. And this is why I say we have a very bright future to the degree that we can internalize, what was it that made us strong? What was the value that these people traveled all around the world wanting to get access to our ancestors? What was it we was doing? Oh, since we know how this plays out, since you broke our trust, and we know we need to, build trust eternally so we don't make this same mistake again. Because the world, whoever's living on this planet, will always need to eat. We see with this trust being broken, what it's done to the planet. We see what it's done to the environment. We broke the trust of the Most High to put us here, right? I put y'all here as stewards, and y'all decided to go do something else. Like, I'm not going to get rid of you, but I must chasten you for you to get back in place. And so once again, we're at this precipice in time where we can get back in that place of stewards, as producers, as caretakers, as nourishers.
It's been a great conversation. I hope y'all got something out of it. At the end of the day, we're going to continue to push this black algorithm, fighting against the algorithm. And we're going to encourage everyone that hears our voice, sees our podcast, to grow harder.
Pushing the black algorithm. Ancestors, they mastered the systems. We raising young bosses, no victims. Planting that knowledge curriculum. Blessing the roots with the nutrients. The darker the berry, black Nubian. Dropping receipts like I'm Julian. The streets with that boot like Peruvian. Trapping the herbs and the fruits and the veggies. CSA boxes, my package is heavy. Ship across town in the bed of my Chevy. Printing them up, growing hard for that baby. If you stay ready, you ain't gotta scramble. Bet on black farmers and growers, no gamble. Reclaiming our pain cause the game is in shambles. Blessed with that melanin, carry the miracle. Mothers and fathers of civilization. Black to the garden with food cultivation. Building back better through black innovation. B1 community growing the nation. Genetically designed to be the dopest. Stoking that growth mindset. Codified, now we focus farming on track on track. Feed the fam, break bread with them. Pushing that B1AG algorithm. Now watch me get them, watch me get them. Pushing that B1AG algorithm. Feed the fam, break bread with them. Pushing that B1AG algorithm. Watch me get them, watch me get them. Pushing that B1AG algorithm.
And if you really want to know something, what do the people need to do, Farmer Brown?
If you really want to know something, you can trust that everybody has to eat. So one of the best things to know is to learn how to grow something.
There it is. This week's almost done, y'all. Keep proceeding in love. Keep your growth mindset. Never stop growing. Never stop growing. Keep reaching for that sun and let your roots grow deeper and wider. This is John Henry Harris. We also have Farmer Brown EMC. This is B1AG Daily Bread Podcast. Until next time, peace.